Welcome to Indie Authors Tell All. On this podcast, independent voices take the mic. This podcast is for those who are engaged in or even just interested in independent publishing. That can be anything from writing all the way through marketing and everything that happens in between. Now, maybe you're writing or publishing just your own titles, or you could be acting as a small publisher. Maybe you offer services to indie authors, like editing and audiobook production and things like that. Or maybe you just might be considering writing a book and you want to peek behind the scenes at what it takes. This podcast is for you.
We're here to shine a light on real-world challenges and successes in independent publishing, straight from the people who make it happen. We know from our collective decades of experience that indie publishing may be independent, but it requires a team effort. Finding your resources, like this podcast or like independent book publishers associations, can save you years of time and thousands of dollars.
Every other week, we chat with Bay Area Independent Publishers Association, or BAIPA, members and industry professionals who are shaping the future of publishing and redefining what it means to go indie.
I'm Becky Parker Geist.
I'm Judy M. Baker.
And I'm Mike Van Horn.
So, Judy, tell us a little bit about you and how you help authors.
The thing about me is I recognize patterns, and a lot of authors come into publishing and they think just putting their book up for sale is a marketing plan. What I do is help them look at how they're connecting with their audience and how to do it in a way that feels aligned with their message and their goals. So I help them open doors, create invitations, and really go for the long haul, because publishing is more than just putting your book up for sale. It's having engagement and building a community around who you are and what you bring to the world.
Yeah, one of the things I think is so common when people first show up, for example, at a BAIPA meeting is, especially if they're new to indie publishing, it can feel so overwhelming, just like this, like a fire hose of information, because it's all new to them. And it's great to hear how you're helping sort of guide them in that process that can become so overwhelming.
Well, I even think back to when I first joined BAIPA, I had a very different intention. I was there because I had a client, and I wasn't thinking I was going to then publish. And so my focus was on marketing. It was never about me as an author as well. And then I realized I wasn't alone. And as I would hear things, it might have been 2 or 3 years down the road before, oh, that's what I need to be doing now, instead of I need to do everything right this minute. And I think that's part of the beauty of BAIPA, is that over time, we've given resources, we brought in experts, but then the industry keeps changing. So you have to be listening and be willing to adapt.
Right. And everyone's coming in at a different point in their journey. And as you continue on, that point in the journey changes. So the information you need changes, and then the industry's changing. So it's so helpful to have this, have the resources available to stay in touch with what's going on and get some help. Because trying to go it alone, not so good.
No. Well, I mean, Mike, look at you. When you first joined, you were writing your business books, and now you've got 4 books into a trilogy. So what did that feel like for you?
Well, so the difference between nonfiction and fiction, well, obviously, with fiction, you just make it all up. Whereas with nonfiction, you actually have to have facts, and that's a lot more difficult. I mean, that's a bit of an over generalization, but with my fiction books, I actually do a lot of research too, because if you're going to write science fiction, you've got to have your impossibilities have to be plausible. So you have to do research to make sure that's happening. With my business books, these are all workbooks for small business owners, and they're based on workshops that I've led and then recorded and took notes and then developed those into publications. And so in truth, I haven't had to do so much research because basically they grow out of things I already know from many years of working with small business owners.
That makes a lot of sense too. I think those of us, well, all three of us write fiction and nonfiction, and the nonfiction did come out of our interactions with clients and being out in the world. So I like the idea that we can blend the two and have some fun with both of them.
There's so many interesting questions that come up during the BAIPA meetings about during our Q&A sessions, which I just love because it's like anybody can ask anything about the topic, and it's fascinating. But I know that there have been a lot of questions about this, if you're writing in two very different genres, then how do you deal with that? So, yeah, it's great.
I don't see that it is all that different. I mean, I look at my own style of writing. I'm not doing anything different when I'm writing nonfiction or fiction. Um, I will say that the challenge for me sometimes is switching from one to the other, because I kind of get on a track and then I don't want to get off that track, and it takes some effort to get onto the other track.
Yeah.
Definitely. I know for me, like I know that I'm going to be submitting some poetry for an anthology coming up, and I have to get my head in a different space when I'm writing poetry than when I'm writing fiction or nonfiction. And it's interesting because it's a different lens. But what I found to be helpful, not only, hearing the questions other authors are asking and potential authors, it's being around people who've done it before me. And I went to a book launch this weekend. I have a friend who's 96 and a half. This was her book launch for her latest book of poetry. And hearing students read some of their poems, and she read some of her poems, it made me think about how each of us has a different lens and how we can share that, and someone else will resonate with the way that we're looking at the world. So I think it's fascinating, and I never get tired of hearing new questions, and sometimes it'll bring up a whole different way to interact with people or interact with the books that we're writing and the stories we're writing.
Yeah. I'd say that one of the things I've found most valuable about BAIPA is in part that Q&A section that we do,
Absolutely.
but also because what I do is I'm helping authors and publishers with audiobooks and podcasts, and the getting to know what authors need, what publishers need, that has been actually tremendously valuable in my business because I've actually been able to grow my business in the direction, informed by the very needs of most authors. And so I think it's allowed me to bring so much more value and understanding to my work with clients when I'm working with them on their audio projects.
So, Becky, when new clients come to you,
Yeah.
do they actually know what they need?
Usually they're saying, I want an audiobook. I have a book. I want an audiobook. And then sometimes there's some, then we're into a much larger conversation about what version, are there multiple points of view, or is this a full cast kind of production? Is it a children's book? Is there music? There's so many different things that we can talk about, and really, and this is one of my favorite things is bringing helping them grow their dream and really bring it to life. That is so exciting. We have literally had clients brought to tears because, in conversation with them, they're like, I felt like nobody believed in me. And now in talking with you, I feel like I'm validated. And it was just, it's powerful. The work of authors, of writers bringing their stories to life. It's like raising children, right? It is life-giving. It can be draining at times. It is frustrating and challenging at times, and it is so incredibly rewarding to see those babies grow up.
So what
You
is
know,
the difference for you between doing an audiobook for fiction versus nonfiction?
There's some style differences potentially, but I think a big thing is we're always starting off from the point of like, what's your biggest goal? And most of the time, that goal is going to differ. For nonfiction, many times there is some larger goal in terms of what they would like to happen for their listeners with the content. That could be, working with them as a coach, just as an example. There are so many potentials there. And with fiction, it's more often I want my story to reach more people. So it varies, but that is always the starting point. What's your biggest goal?
I agree with that 100%. I never say, here's my goal for your book. I ask the author, what's your intention? Because some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated because they've got a message that they feel has to go out in the world, or there's a particular audience that they want to help. And because I work mostly with nonfiction, but I don't exclusively work with nonfiction. I've worked with children's book authors. I've worked with poets. I've worked with memoirists. I've I've helped fiction writers too. And hearing how they came to write their stories, that's the thing that just, lights me up. And then we look at, who are they? Where were they when they started writing this? Are they still in that same career? Is writing their career now, or is it a parallel that they're doing consulting, or maybe they're still an accountant somewhere, but they also decided to write a book. And that's what I think was so amazing to me about BAIPA, that when I walked in the door, I saw all of these people doing different things, bringing different talents into the room. And what I feel I helped in shaping the current culture was to invite the members to share what they've learned. And when I first joined, that was not how the meetings ran. Q&A was only board members were answering questions. And I said, well, wait a minute. We've got someone over here who has, had a number one book in several different categories. And we've got people over here who've done translation, and we've got people over here who are great at editing. And so why not pool our collective intellect and see what happens? And I think the transformation was so dramatic. It was suddenly as if Pandora's box had opened up. And instead of just two people, pontificating from the front of the room, we suddenly had people growing their confidence and trying things that they might not have tried. And it made it more engaging, and people started owning, not just, paying money to be a member, but contributing. And I think that's the whole beauty of independent publishing, is that we're all in this together, and we're raising each other up and learning from each other's successes and the things that we wish we would have known when we started, because you only make those really big boo-boos once, and then, oh yeah, if I would have known that, I wouldn't have done that. So I really do appreciate that. And the members are phenomenal in bringing in so many interesting ways of telling stories.
Absolutely. And Judy, Mike, I am so excited about our Indie Authors Tell All podcast, because we are going to be bringing all of these stories right into the podcast and inviting our listeners to be a part of that conversation as well and to ask their own questions because, we want our listeners to send in their questions and their comments, and you can send them right into podcast@BAIPA.org, BAIPA.org. So, Judy, remind us and our listeners, what's this podcast about?
Well, it's about real world challenges and real world successes in independent publishing.
So, together, we're going to dive into what it takes to write, publish, market, one story at a time. Please like and subscribe so you get alerted to new episodes dropping. Your subscription also just helps our podcast become more visible so we can help more authors succeed. Thanks so much for joining us.